I don't know if you noticed that last night when we were reading that, but you got to think, where's all these immediate enemies of Israel that surround Israel? Why are they not in that picture? Which has brought up a very interesting study in recent years, is that there is potentially another attack involved, but during this war, and it's a whole topic, we wouldn't have time to get into it, where Israel absolutely wipes them out. And as a result, according to this, there will be a deep respect for the land of Israel. Now, I know right now we're hearing these rumors of wars about the potential of Israel attacking Iran. And we'll show you some stuff about that in just a moment. But this particular one is quite interesting. Now, when you get into Revelation and we're being introduced to the dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, it tells us in verse 9 of chapter 12 that he deceiveth the whole world. Now, this shows a very important thing when it comes to the spirit that is going to be behind the Antichrist, as we dealt with on Friday night. And I want you to listen to this, because if you don't hear what I say right here, it'll be a little confusing to you if you don't catch my point. Satan's mode of operation has always involved either influencing or undermining authority. Now listen to me. I know you know what I'm talking about. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. Every pastor who's a godly man understands how that happens in every church. There's always something about the authority. Something about the authority in the family, something about the authority in the marriage, something about the authority in the church, something about the authority in the government. It's just something there. It's a rebellious nature. And the Bible makes it clear where that came from. Because the ultimate rebel, folks, was Lucifer. Lucifer rose a rebellion. We know back in Revelation 12 we just referred to here, that the scripture says he took 1/3 of the angels with him. He pulled them out with him. And if you were with us, I think it was last night when we talked about Lucifer being a musician, a magnificent, beautiful musician, he literally was able to convince in his rebellion, his pride and arrogance, that God needed to be fought against. And as a result, it says that he trafficked in this. And he began to merchandise himself within these angelic beings. And this is where we get fallen angels. Now, we know this, another example, when we read the story of David when he was older in his years, and he looked back over his warfare, and he started understanding how he'd been able to fight against all these armies. And the devil started getting him thinking, you know, this is because of your magnificent big army. That's how you're doing it. You better check and see if you got enough men to fight. And that's exactly what happened. And it says, Satan stood up against what? Israel. But notice how he stands up against Israel. He provoked David to number Israel. So who does he attack in the way? Who does he try to influence? Who does he try to manipulate? He tries to manipulate the authority. Here's the king. This is what you got to understand when you see this on it's almost like this is just too real. It's just too obvious because you see this constantly. You got to understand, there's a reason why there's such a battle going on in the White House. Because, folks, Mr. Obama, our president, he's under major attack of hell. And that's why the scripture tells us to pray for him. Even though we don't necessarily may approve of what he's doing, the scripture says we need to pray and intercede, because there's more going on than just that man. There's a spiritual wickedness behind it. But ends up what happened. What's this? David said to Joab, which now is the next in command, the general, and to the rulers of the people. So now we got the king, the general, and the leaders, and you've got an authority system. And who is behind it? Satan's behind it. We've seen this happen when the Lord had his ministry. And he was being constantly, troubled by the spiritual authority in their day. the Pharisees and the scribes. Matter of fact, at one point, Jesus literally turned to him and says, you are of your father, the devil. Because he understood that their hatred toward him was more than just some jealousy among Jews. This was really a demonic manifestation. You're all with me? Is it possible for me to shut those doors back there? I think many of you will remember that one of the actual leaders in the Lord's ministry, his right-hand man, one of his apostles, actually the guy that took care of the money bag, the scripture says Satan entered to Judas and he betrayed him. Now, why didn't the enemy use somebody else? Well, this is his success route that he's taken and proven beyond means, without any means, that this is the way to do it. Now, here's what we know. We know that there's an authority system of hell. We know that it's a demonic thing. We know that they've always been against authority. We know that they target the leaders of the world. And we're going to see this played out before us in the last days. Let's take a look at this, and now we can really get into the meat of our message. It says very clearly that this is going to involve what will be the last day end time battle that we've talked about a little bit last night. Here's what the scripture says. Let's take a look at it in Revelation chapter 16. The sixth angel poured out his vial upon the river, the great river Euphrates, and the waters thereof were dried up, that the way of the what? What does it say there? What's the phrase? Okay, now that's very important. These are talking about kings, leaders, rulers of the east that might be prepared. Now watch what it states. And I saw 3 unclean spirits. Now stop there for a second. What is going to persuade these rulers, these kings? What's going to bring these leaders of the world? Well, it says spirits. Next verse we'll see that they're devils. Okay, watch this. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. There's your authority system. There's your demonic trinity. You got Satan, you got the Antichrist, and you got the false prophet. These spirits, though, watch what it says. These spirits are like frogs. Now, I'm going to show you something that just might, to some of you, might seem a little foolish and a little silly. But here again, folks, you've got to understand how the enemy works. The scripture says he can get an advantage of us when we become ignorant of his devices. When you see how much this infiltrates children's programs, their books, their toys, their cartoons, their TV shows, their video games, the movies, and you see it's almost like a subtle preparation for this. Now, you would think that statement would be bizarre, but here is something quite interesting. There was a series of films that came out about this little girl that's kind of a quote gifted child, and ends up being that she's a witch, and she's in training. Well, what happens in the middle of this particular movie is quite interesting, and I want you to watch this and keep in mind what we just read about these spirits. Okay?
It's so unfair.
Interesting.
Did I say something?
Did you ever get that feeling where, you feel a sore throat coming on, sort of scratchy?
You mean like a frog in your throat?
So what this guy's going to do is he's going to cast a spell on the singer. Remember what the scripture says. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth.
What I call a frog.
Okay, now folks, a kid will see that. A lot of times, especially if parents buy these videos for them, they'll watch it over and over and over and over and over again.